Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. One of the most important things that you need to do to enter the pipeline is to be prepared to train. And one of the ways that you guys can do that is check out 18 Alpha Fitness. Who better to learn fitness programming and take you through the ringer than somebody who has been through it themselves? Kevin, phenomenal human being. He was a Green Beret. He has been, he was a developer. No, he was a strength and conditioning coach at the pipeline. He's been in it for years, and it's almost like he knows a thing or two about training and preparation. What say you?
It is. Yeah. Use the code ONEREADY. So that's the number one ready with Kevin, and he will provide you his remarkable services. It's not just a workout program. He's going to give you video coaching. He's going to give you mentorship, and it's not just for selection and assessment, regardless of what you want to do, whether it be Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, fire, police, rescue, anything that you want to get physically ready for. Kevin is going to be able to use his decades of experience to help get you across the finish line, not just for the selection, but for your entire career. He really does want to build you from the ground up to be the best tactical athlete, whatever flavor that is that you could possibly be. So check him out, 18 Alpha Fitness, over there on Instagram. It's the easiest way to get to him. And then use our code ONEREADY for a sweet discount.
Absolutely. Speaking of flexibility and durability, I think we have another thing that covers it down on those, right? I want to talk about the most flexible and durable gear out there in the world right now, whether you're going to carry a rifle or a bow, or you're looking into the tactical side of it. Eberlestock, I think we can all attest, their stuff not only does it work well, but it's like they can read your mind. You're like, hey, I wish I had a pocket here. Boom, there's a pocket there for everything that you could possibly need. And so go check out Eberlestock. They have the bags, they have a whole new line of apparel and all that other stuff, and they're doing a great job, and they're crushing it for all of your outdoor needs, whether you're into hunting, whether you're getting into tactical situations, or anything else that you need. You just want to carry some weight around. I'm going to have the Bando bag. I don't know if Aaron's heard of the Bando bag, but it's pretty awesome.
Too soon. It's too soon, Trent. I've been trying to get my hands on that Bando bag. The big problem with Eberlestock is that I always want to buy new stuff, but their stuff is so durable and it lasts so long. I can't justify spending more money on it because I'm like, oh, I need a new bag. And everybody's like, why? That bag looks perfect. And I'm like, just wear out already so that I can go get yet another bag. But man, they're playing around with all kinds of stuff, modular zip-on, zip-off frames that you can either go out on a week-long hunt, or you can go out and turn that into base camp and then take out your 3-day bag, doing a lot of exciting stuff on that technical apparel side. So go check out Eberlestock. Use our code ONESREADY at checkout. Get you a sweet discount. Those support great people. The people working at Eberlestock are some of the world's best humans. And so go check them out.
Yeah, OR10.
OR10, yeah.
Nope,
OR10, OR10, whatever. Anyway, now on to this amazing episode with the special warfare folks. We had some amazing talk, so I'm really looking forward to this next.
I think
podcast.
we already know how it went, right?
So yeah, we already know how it went, and
good.
It was good. I hope everybody else enjoys it.
Now, there we go.
All right, enjoy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. You can see the team room has a lot more seats in it this week because you have questions about the Special Warfare Candidate Course. Well, guess what? We brought on what I'm assuming to be half of the staff to come talk about the Special Warfare Candidate Course, or SWCC as it's affectionately known. You got to get through ANS. We all know that. That's your 5-meter target. Well, SWCC is there specifically to build you up, get you ready for the stressors that you're going to see in ANS so that you're throwing your A game at that thing to make sure that you get picked up. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over. Emily, why don't you start us off? Who are you? What's kind of your background, and what are you doing down at SWCC?
Yeah, so I'm Staff Sergeant Emily Valdivino. So I work in the SWCC flight, the Human Performance Flight there. I'm a 4J, so a physical medicine technician. That is my AFSC in the Air Force. I'm also a strength and conditioning coach, so I kind of wear a couple hats down there at SWCC. So I am in charge of rehabbing any injured students and cadre that are over at the 350th and in the SWCC pipeline.
Okay. Well, I was made aware that after you get out of the pipeline, it's impossible to get injured. So I imagine the operator portion of your job has got to be extremely low. So that's good. Nick, welcome. How about you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. My name is Nick DeMarco. I'm a GS over at SWCC. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. My primary role is the BMT program, but just like Emily said, we wear a lot of hats. And so I oversee primarily BMT, but I've got my hands in just about every other part that's taking place over there at Lackland, to include SWCC, silver and gold, helping out with pre-dive and all of that.
Okay, awesome. If we could do me a favor, we got to stop saying wear so many hats, because in the internet world, you guys will get in trouble for that. One of the other podcast guests, I can't remember which one, got into a little kerfluffle over it. So just careful. That's all. Zach, what's up? How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, my name's Zach Henniger. I'm one of the GS strength coaches over at SWCC. My primary role is to pretty much be oversight for the SWCC program, make sure that flows as we want it to, and help just give active duty information on whether things need to be changed, modified, just help give some direction, as well as I also help out with the pre-dive course. And then I've been working on developing the pre-accession strength program to help lead into BMT. So that's something we're also working on currently. So yeah, that's kind of my role.
So that's actually really interesting. So a pre-accession strength and conditioning program to help, where, at what point in the pipeline is that? Is that before BMT?
That would be before BMT. Yeah. So we're working on it varies. Right now it's still in the works, but it's basically a 20 to basically 12-week program, depending on previous history, previous injury, working with Research Flight, come up with a fancy chart to help dictate, hey, basically how long is it going to take a certain candidate to prepare for it. If we take someone who has zero training experience or never played a sport in their life, which we've seen at SWCC before, not saying their chances are unlikely. I've seen a celloist end up at pre-dive and have success, and he never played a sport in his life, we've had people play 3 sports in high school. So it's just to help prepare them based off of their previous experiences and previous injuries, and make sure their workload is I guess accurate to what they've experienced so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say the easiest way to really throw a team room into chaos is you just take a ball of any type and throw it in there, because while operators may run in straight lines and jump and do push-ups really well, man, some of the athleticism, it may or may not be lacking. That's all I'm saying.
Mainly PJs. That's mainly PJs.
Mainly PJs.
And we can tell that by playing Ultimate Football. PJs have no hands.
I'm sorry. I will speak up for the 321st PJs. We were always the first picked on Friday football peaches. So you watch it. That's historically accurate. Shane Brickey punched in the air right now as my opposing quarterback. So, Emily, I kind of want to open the floor to you and start talking about SWCC and the nuts and bolts of it. But we're going to start as soon as you get the students, right? They're over at BMT, and, we've talked about, I'm going to lose my gains at BMT, and that whole discussion has been a thing for us forever. When you first see the students, when they get off that bus and you're starting to get them into those training programs, what is the SWCC staff goal? Like, obviously we're going to have an intake, we're going to run some fitness tests, and I assume some movement screeners and stuff like that. But overarching staff, what is the goal for the initial students over at SWCC?
Yeah, so I actually let Nick take that, because he's the one who really sees them right off the bus.
Yeah, send it, Nick. Go for it, man.
Yeah, so we've got 7 weeks of training basically, and of those 7 weeks, the BMT trainees are only going to get 6 weeks of working out. That last week is basically graduation, coin ceremony, and all of that. In the first week, what we're currently doing right now is running a mock IFT that's split up across 2 days. So one day they'll only do their cals, 2 minutes of pull-ups, sit-ups, push-ups, and then the second day they'll get their run. And that gives us a baseline to see how well their fitness prior to coming in is. From there, we kind of give them basically the rep ranges throughout the rest of the program, what times they should be running. And we have a plan in place, but we're now able to kind of individualize it a little bit. So, for example, like week 2, Monday, maybe 400-meter sprints with cows. And we can say, hey, if you were in this time range on your 1.5 miles, we want your splits to be between this and this, because that's going to progress you throughout those 6 weeks and hopefully build you to a really good IFT score.
Okay, so You guys are running through the BMT. I'm sorry, I kind of lost track of the thread there for just a second. Aaron was bothering me on the phone, and I was like, okay, so they come in and we're going to assess them and figure out where they need to go. And so when they get off the bus, like, what are the most important things? Like, is there anything that stands out to y'all as like the foundational skills that they are more important than the other ones? You know, because you're kind of breaking it up and you're trying to learn all these things at once for some of these folks. But what's the if the candidates are out there and they only need to work on one thing, what's the most important thing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we see is if they could get more time on their feet prior to coming to BMT, that would be the most helpful thing. I think that a lot of candidates don't realize just how often they're going to be standing around, right? So, you know, the normal candidate probably drives to the gym and then drives to the pool and then drives to go get food or whatever it may be. Whereas in BMT, you are going to walk everywhere on top of your marching. There's no elevators right over in the dorm. So you're going to be walking up and down 3-4 flights of stairs every single day. And it sounds silly, but I'll bet you if they're watching, you know, how many steps they take, that's probably fivefold by the time they get into BMT, right? And so probably, and I'm sure Emily will speak to this more, the biggest problem that we have over at BMT and with SWCC is that bone stress injury. And I think that a lot of that is just due because while they're running and they know that they've got to run, they're not taking into account just how often they're going to be on their feet, standing, walking from appointments to the chow hall, back and forth, on top of all of the physical fitness that they're doing.
So besides just standing around, and this is kind of for anybody, you know, like I found that when I was an instructor, like the rucking, you know, people that really built up the front part of your leg, you know, the muscles. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea what that is. But it really like started cutting down on those stress injuries and shin splints and all that other stuff. And that's all we're talking about, right? Is just walking more and maybe it's some little bit of rucking and all that other stuff. Like, and how many people, you know, start breaking their legs when they get there? Like, what kind of numbers are we talking about? Unless you don't want to talk about specific numbers, and then we're not going to talk about specific numbers.
No, I mean, I can speak to it. We've run these numbers. It's kind of been a highlight over at SWCC as of recently anyway. We're pretty much in line with the regular BMT cohorts that are out there. We're looking probably somewhere in the 20 to 30% range of people that are going to end up on some sort of profile for an MSK, which is a musculoskeletal injury. So, and that sounds probably worse than it is. Our ATs and PTs are a lot more conservative, so they'd rather put those trainees on a profile sooner, get them off of their feet. Now, they are still going to train while they're in BMT. We're going to modify their program, so maybe they can't do as much running, but they'll be on an assault bike, for example. So we're still keeping those trainees in shape. When it comes to actually how many trainees are we holding over and not graduating because of injury, it's 1 to 2%. So our ATs, our PTs are doing a really good job, you know, making sure that our candidates are healthy and getting through. And then the program itself is working really well. So the only downside to that is perhaps you're starting SWCC maybe below the curve, which is where if you can do, like you're saying there, Trent, more on your front end, and to Zach's point, when this pre-accession program comes out, the more you can set yourself up for success prior to leaving the BMT, now you're not playing catch up the entire time because you're on a profile, and then you go into SWCC a little bit, maybe undertrained because you were on that profile. So yeah, to all of your points, putting in some more of that effort on the front end prior to getting to BMT is absolutely going to help you on the back half.
So, Zach, I think we just figured it out for you. I think we just wrote your pre-sessions program, more walking. Yeah. So, like, what are you going to do with that to make sure that, I mean, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, and that's kind of really what the whole, when we sat down and we looked at this pre-accession program, we kind of established certain tiers to it. We're like, what's number one priority, which if you're going to, you know, go through BMT and enter SWCC, is pass that IFT. So we made that pretty much the number one focus, is like, we need to get through this IFT. What's second tier? We want to make sure they're adequately prepared. So basically what our workloads look like in that pre-accession is, you know, like I said, depending on your training age, previous history, you might be starting from ground zero. So we're generally starting from basically couch potato to basically increasing your mileage at a gradual pace to withstand the demands of SWCC. And that's kind of how we mirrored it, is meshing that pre-accession program to that SWCC volume, because we got a little bit more time to do that. Like I said, if you start from the ground zero, you got 20 weeks to work your way up to handle that mileage for those lower legs to help eliminate those BSI injuries. So that's kind of like what we work towards. It's the same thing with the swimming volume. You know, we'll get some candidates that show up to BMT or SWCC and, you know, they're never swam before. So it's the same idea. It's just start from ground zero and building them up to handle their amounts of volumes that they're going to be experiencing in these later courses.
Is that pretty realistic? Is being able to take in 20 weeks, like, and being able to get to where they need to in 20 weeks? I mean, that is a terrible question. Like, I fully admit, because it depends on what physicality they're coming from, like what baseline they're coming from. But say somebody who, you know, you mentioned the celloist and stuff like that, like taking somebody who is maybe didn't play sports in high school or is not athletically inclined, is that a fair assumption that they can get to where they need to be in 20 weeks?
I think so. We've had few people look at this pre-accession program. I feel like it's pretty good. And I think 20 weeks is a good number to hit. I feel like any more than that, then, you know, how many are going to follow it at that point? What's the buy-in going to be from candidates? If you make it a 30-week program, right? Then, you know, you got to think of buy-in from kids this day and age. You know, if you put something too big out there, like, right, is the adherence to the program going to be good or not? So I don't know. So we figured 20 weeks because it sounded like, talking with previous people, they get about 16 weeks before they ship out. So we were like, well, let's just tack on another 4 weeks for those people who need a little bit more extra time.
Okay.
Yeah, and to back you up, Zach, I mean, when we do that mock IFT in week 1, right, the candidates are counting their own cals. So we're assuming that those numbers are a little bit inflated anyway, because they're not trained to the standard that the coaches and cadres.
Those lion students, that's what you almost said. Those lion cones counting extra push-ups.
and so still with, you know, those lion cones counting their own reps, we still see a 30% failure rate in that first week on just cows and just run. And those are done on separate days, right? So it's not even that they can use the excuse that, hey, I'm fatigued from my cows before my run, and that's why I came in at 10:22, right? So these are 2 separate days, and we still see that 30% failure rate.
30%.
Historically speaking, now on the back end, when they enter SWCC for that official IFT SWCC, where they do all the movements back to back to back, we have roughly about a 90 to 92% pass rate. So in just 6 weeks, we're taking cones, right, from self-counted reps at 30% failure rate to about a 10% failure rate. Now they get a second refire, and out of that 10% that get a second chance, we graduate about 50%. So we've really got about somewhere between a 6 and 7, maybe 5% failure rate. So when you think that that's all that we're giving them in 6 weeks and we can make that much improvement, to Zach's point, you know, the program that he's primarily developing over 20 weeks is absolutely, I think, in my opinion, going to be enough. Again, it is what you put into it is what you get out of it. So the candidate that's working with a coach, working with their developer to run this program with its intent, yeah, I would back up Zach 100% that's enough time to get somebody to their goals.
Well, I'd say without a doubt, with the amount of staff you guys have, and since you guys have been doing this for so long, you definitely have the data to back up everything that's here. Which is funny, because on the backside that you guys don't hear, like, we get a lot of messages of people saying that, hey, you guys don't know what you're talking about. How can you possibly have that kind of data and stuff like that? And it's like, you don't understand how many people are watching and how of meticulous of notes and data has to get captured in this program, like throughout, from basic well, not even basic, from development all the way through. I mean, we have profiles on these people, these cones, these lying cones, that last them all the way until they get to their unit and on. Over to you, Emily. In terms of injuries, like coming out of basic and out of SWCC, like what are we looking at? Because there's a lot of concern out there from folks because, and you get your normal, hey, shin splints. I get shin splints whenever I start running, or, I rucked twice and I started getting shin splints and stuff like that. So what are you looking at in terms of, injury?
Yeah, so in basic training, the athletic trainer does a great job at kind of modifying and giving us, once the student comes over to SWCC, passes the IFT, giving us a good idea of what kind of injuries are out there. Typically, like Nick was saying, lower leg, MSKI, musculoskeletal injury. And then from there, if it's identified early enough, it can be kind of mitigated throughout the course. Once they get to ANS and TACP, it can be mitigated. However, if the student doesn't speak up and they just are running essentially or walking on broken legs, then that's, once it gets too far down the line and we capture that, then they end up going to what's called white team, which is kind of the medical holdover for special warfare. And then from there, they get rehabbed and then come back to SWCC. So I guess the most important thing is if you are having pain or any type of injuries, like speak up about it. We have an amazing team here to help take care of those problems. And this is the best place to be injured, honestly.
Yeah.
I had a question on that. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So as these candidates are getting through the BMT program, as they're getting, ready to step on their doorstep, what are you seeing that they could do ahead of time? Like, is there a focus area, maybe some extra rolling out? They're not used to being, running in boots, or you're seeing those lower leg injuries. From your optic, is there something they can be doing to make themselves a little bit more durable? And then, on the back end, essentially, that would kind of cut down on the amount of injuries that you're seeing?
Yeah, if we're talking before they go to basic training, so like Nick was saying, the exposure to being on their feet, get a pair of boots if you can, walk around in them, get used to being on your feet. You have to let your tissues, your lower leg tissues, adapt to that kind of stimulus, and that's just going to progress as you go through the pipeline. So I would say definitely that's any lower leg strengthening, and then just regular maintenance on stretching and foam rolling and stuff like that. Anything to help you recover for the next day of training. So with the pre-accession program, there is some preventative stuff in there, some mobility and stretching to help with the volume of training. If someone hasn't ever trained before and now they're really sore, there are some tips in there as well.
Nice. Well, Nick, that kind of opens it up directly to you. And I want to kind of open it up, not just from a mobility and durability aspect, but more of a strength and conditioning and an overall physical preparation. So from your pre-accession program, what are we really focusing on? Because people DM us, they're like, what should I do? And our answer, just because we're knuckle dragging operators, is like, listen, you need to focus on the specific event, right? Like, you're training for the IFT. The IFT is the only thing that should matter to you, other than being on your feet and, throw in some rucking in there to make it a little bit spicy. But really, the course is meant to build you up, right? And that's always what we tell people. Can you help us if we're off target there? What do you think people should be focusing on in that pre-accession waiting to ship window?
Yeah. So Aaron, do you need a job over with us? Because you nailed it, right? Like, the most important thing is to keep the most important thing the most important thing, right? And that means, like, just like you're saying, like, hey, if your first gate into special warfare is the IFT, then you better be pretty darn good at running a mile and a half, pull-ups, sit-ups, and push-ups, and all of that. If you've got access to a gym, we want to strengthen and build that durability as much as possible. I'm going to let Zach kind of take that pre-accession, what they're looking for and what exactly, is built into that program. But, to echo what Emily said, that lower body stuff, what you said, keep feet on, time on your feet, and then work towards those IFT gates. Like, absolutely. Yeah. But Zach, please jump on in with what you're programming in the pre-accession.
Yeah, I think, like we said, first tier's past that IFT. So, to complement you knuckle draggers, we still got the pull-ups, the push-ups, and things like that. And then we just add a little flair, a little spice to basically complement all the extra training they're doing, the running, the swimming. And that's where the S&C is built around, is to complement those other modalities to basically prevent you from getting hurt or make you more durable. We're not necessarily trying to, it might be involving building some strength, but mostly it's just to get you out of the habit of being swimming all the time or running all the time. It's to get you back to that normal body function. So that involves just doing a lot of the opposite stuff. If you're swimming a lot, we got to do a lot more backside shoulder stuff. If you're running, Trent hit it. We got to do some front side anterior tib raises, and we got to work on some backside posterior chain. So it's just having everything complement each other right out the get-go. Like we said, the big thing is being able to run, swim a lot and having that workload. And the S&C portion is just to complement that, to make you more durable.
I mean, but it's more important than the swim stuff, right? I'm assuming you all make fun of the swim coach nerds over there.
Oh, absolutely.
And you guys are better.
Chance, yeah.
Yeah. Strength and conditioning all day, every day.
There's hierarchies everywhere you work, and the strength and conditioning coaches kick sand in the face of the swimming coaches. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, but like the swim is one of the quote unquote safer parts of the IFT. We don't see very many people failing the swim. And now I say that, and all of the candidates are not going to stop swimming, and swim failures are going to go up. So Perfect. I don't want to put it like that, right? But the swim coaches that we have on staff are really actually phenomenal, and I think that that's a big part of why we see such low IFT failures in the swim. To kind of add on to what Zach was saying, I just thought about it when he was talking about it. In addition to like the strength and conditioning, I think a big important factor is to have the trainees try and work on like just general athleticism. We do dead bugs in the first or second week, and to see the amount of candidates that have a hard time moving contralaterally, right? So keeping the right arm extended and their left leg extended while the opposites move, that's really, really hard for them. There's almost like a neurological, that cross body, they've never been exposed to that, and so that's like a real weakness. When we do things like A-skips or lateral A-skips, the coordination in and of itself is pretty bad across the majority of the trainees out there.
I know.
It's my favorite part of the day is to watch them warm up and see just things like skips where they're same elbow. Yeah, right. It looks like marionette crossing the field. I
just picture it like, remember that old video of there was the American Special Forces soldier, and he's trying to teach his Iraqi counterparts how to do jumping jacks, and it's just a dumpster fire from start to finish. I imagine that's what it's like. So
it looks a lot like that, and it looks like that in week 1, and it's not really all the way ironed out by week 6 either. Like, you'll still have a good
20 weeks for the pipeline, but it's at 20 weeks pre-accession. That's what you get for pipeline preparation, but it's really a lifetime of trying to not look cringy while doing contralateral movement.
Absolutely. So that would be one other thing that I would add is, get on YouTube, look up some of these A skips, B skips, lateral skips, and stuff like that, and maybe film yourself, because
be athletic.
A lot of people, be athletic. That's it.
Well, I wanted to bring it back a little bit to the 20 weeks. And say I'm a student out there, and I jump on the 20-week program, and day 1, I wake up the next morning and I'm super sore. Like, maybe I can do an IFT, but also like I do one IFT and I barely pass it and I'm wrecked. Like, is there space to maneuver? Like, how sore should I be in the beginning? And is there room for that student? And should they kind of back off on that a little bit and build volume instead of going after intensity right away? Because that seems to me like the volume versus intensity thing is sometimes like something that gets lost a lot of times with these young folks out there. And this is kind of like an Emily, Zach. There's a kind of an all of you question. So Emily, since I'm talking about soreness, let's start with you. Like, how much soreness can your body handle, and how much should you be focusing on volume, working up to that durability portion?
Yeah, so working through some general soreness is good, just because you are going to get used to that. You're going to be sore while you're at SWCC, and you're going to have to show up and perform. That's not going to change. So I think working through a little bit of that is perfectly acceptable. But really, if you're, I would say, I was thinking about this earlier, I would say if you are out of high school and you're training and you don't have like a full-time job, sleep as much as you can, eat as much as you can. This goes back to that recovery piece. So if you're recovering pretty well, you should be able to attack the next day, train. The pre-accession program it's 20 weeks long for a reason. And it does start out, pretty, I don't want to say easy, but it ramps up appropriately to be able to handle that soreness.
And Zach, so there's always that ramp onto anything. So like if someone kind of took your program and extended another 4 weeks because they're just not ready to start yet, like how does that work, and what would be your suggestions for that?
Yeah.
To make sure it works.
Yeah, so to give you the insight of the program, the workload and the training frequency kind of correlate. So when right out the get go, if I'm starting at week 1 or week 0, it's basically starting at 3 days a week. So you're going to have two with the weekend, you'd have 4 rest days built into that. And then it'll eventually progress to 4 days, 5 days, and eventually 6 days. So the rest is kind of built in right out the get-go. And if you're someone who's still struggling with that, then maybe it's, hey, like you exactly hit the nail on the head, Trent, with it. Maybe you just got to repeat that week, 1 through 4 phase to get used to it before progressing to that next one. But I would say with the volume and intensity, focus more on getting the reps. So focus on the volume and maybe lower the intensity. So don't be pushing yourself as hard or on your pull-ups or things like that. Because I know some things we had programmed with a weighted vest. If you can't do it with weight, then just drop back down to body weight. Or if you struggle with the body weight, then maybe you got to add a band or some sort of assisted resistance to it. Again, it's not about where you start, it's where you finish, right? And that's the whole point of this is be humbled where you're starting, but just see yourself progress as you're going week to week to week, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's almost like, we say these things and maybe the candidate's hearing it from you. Maybe it'll make us feel better because we say it a million times. Trust the process. Hey, if the program, my strength and conditioning coaches, like when they see me doing stuff, they're like, hey, Aaron, what extra stuff are you doing right now? And I'm just like, I'm just doing some extra stuff. And in his head, he's like, I hate you because you're not following the program. You're doing extra things that you don't need to. And it's not for, there's a good little nugget in here is, sometimes people, they decide that they want to do this thing and they're getting ready, through their own physical prep and through the T3I development program, and they want to throw everything at it, right? So they're like, if I'm not PRing every single day, if I'm not going as hard as I possibly can every single day, there's no way I'm going to make it. And from what I'm hearing from you, smart professional individuals, is that may not necessarily be the best way forward. So, Nick, I'm going to turn it over to you. Can you tell me why competition level CrossFit is the absolute 100% best way to train for these sort of career fields? And if your answer is no, just go ahead. There's a red button on the bottom that says leave. So just go from there.
It's, man, you kind of put me on the spot here.
I'll come up with a better one, right?
Functional fitness, not CrossFit, just functional
general
fitness. Physical
preparedness, right? So we always look at the GPP programs. CrossFit is a GPP program. Okay, great. They have their use. As an addition, because people pay for Metcons and CrossFit gyms. You go to CrossFit so that you can take your shirt off and work out. And if you go to CrossFit long enough, somebody will actually want to look at you without your shirt on. You know what I mean? So It's like a self-licking ice cream cone in that way. But the real question here inside of all of the cynicism is, no kidding, like where can people start adding that into the program? And is that beneficial from what you're seeing?
Leading up to BMT, if you're running, the pre-accession program that SWCC's, kind of developing, amongst those professionals, and you're starting off on that couch potato, path, which there's nothing wrong with that, then there's probably not a whole lot of extra room for that type of activity. Now, if you're starting and you look at the pre-accession program and you are maybe a D1 athlete, right? And we have that. You're medaling at marathons or whatever. Then maybe there's some room for more additional GPP stuff. Those people are, from what I've seen, and please jump in here, Zach, that those people are few and far between compared to, the general mass. And so, while that stuff on Instagram, that stuff on, TikTok, the games and all of that, it looks really, really sexy and it's awesome and everything. You just got to be careful with it. And this is not me to bash CrossFit. I think that there are really, really great, competent CrossFit coaches out there. And I always come back to say this too, right? Anybody can sign up for a 24-hour membership and have no experience whatsoever. And there's no coach there watching you there at all. So you can get just as hurt doing that. So, if you're at a spot where, hey, I want to go to a CrossFit gym for either the community or whatever, it's a good spot actually too. If you don't know how to deadlift, there are CrossFit gyms everywhere. Just do your due research. Make sure that the coach that you're signing up with, has maybe a USAW level 1 or powerlifting certification, has a CSCS, right? That's kind of the gold standard in our industry. Ask those questions. Make sure that you're getting that advice from that person. But yeah, to add in extra workouts should probably be at the top of your game. And then on top of that, like you had said, is CrossFit training you for the IFT? They're training you for a lot of other things, and maybe you're going to be a well-rounded athlete. But when it comes to the specificity of, can I do a strict pull-up? Can I do strict push-ups, sit-ups, run, swim, all of that? It might be missing some holes. And again, if you want to go to a CrossFit gym and bring your coach or whoever the IFT score sheet and say, hey, can you program a little bit more specific for these? I think that's probably a good idea. But keep the most important thing. And for that, to get into the pipeline, it's that IFT.
Fantastic. I'm going to turn it over to you, Zach, because you're kind of starting on that very front end that we've been talking about, kind of flirting with this whole time. Are there any other hobbies or, things that you would add in? Would you just say, hey, at the end of today's workout, or, today you're going to do 2 workouts. We're going to have the program workout for day 1. And then later in the day, you're going to take a 45-minute walk outside just to make sure that we're still, moving and doing other stuff. And I'd like you to transition into kind of that active rest as well, because you brought up that you're going to be training, at the beginning, 4 days. And some people might feel some type of way about only training 4 days a week. Yeah. What are some other active rest day stuff that you could put in?
And that's kind of what we're putting in too, is if the rest day is not always an off day, it's you're doing something, whether it's some sort of mobility, like you said, we might program walking. It kind of varies depending on what phase we're in of that program. But yeah, if I'm that top 10% of candidates who are, just physically ready or physically gifted, right? Yeah, to do extra on your feet, walking, very low impact, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's kind of what the whole goal is. Or to, you could even slightly modify that program a little bit. If I felt good on doing five reps, maybe just do 2 more reps, add 20% and you're fine. No more than that. That's what, when we sat down and we wrote this, where we said the top 10% people who come in already doing what they're doing, they're always going to keep doing what they're doing, right? They got it figured out. It's more so that, that 80% to that bottom 10% that needs the help or guidance. And that's kind of what when we sat down and we kind of outlined this program, that's what we were training towards, was that more that 80% of the candidates who need that guidance, need that kind of path mapped out for them. And then that bottom 10% who just may feel overwhelmed or just don't know what they're getting themselves into. So that's what we kind of, when we sat down, wrote this program, that's what we had in mind.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I'll try and shape this question. I'm going to throw it over to you, Emily, but I actually want to get we'll go Emily and Nick and then Zach. But what is some of the things, if you could pinpoint one thing that you see lacking from candidates that are coming in, whether it's, primarily physicality wise. I have something in mind. So if the three of you don't hit it, there's something that I know that because I felt that struggle and we get it a lot, but let's start with you, Emily, and then we'll go to Nick and then Zach. But what do you got?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Yeah,
perfect. That's exactly what we want to do. We want to put you in a position where you could possibly answer incorrectly and get fired. Chief has an answer in his head too. He totally set you up. So just don't think about it. Just talk. We're going to go live.
So, so the team that we work on as the Human Performance Flight, like we have a psych doc, we have a dietitian, we have strength and conditioning coaches, we have a physical therapist. So it's kind of a little bit of everything. It's the stress management. It's do you even know what you're consuming in a day as far as like food, water intake? It's the training is just a piece of it, right? Like the actual strength and conditioning and the swimming and being on your feet. That's just a portion of it. So I don't remember what the actual question was, but I think that just trying to add tools to your little tool belt of how you respond to stress. If you know how you respond to stress, that's going to help you when you're here. If you don't know what you're eating or consuming, download an app and start tracking your food. That way, when you show up here and the dietitian is asking you these questions, you already know and you can speak to it. If you know that you stay up late and you don't get a lot of sleep, you're going to regret those days when you're here and you're sleeping now with, 50 other people in the same room. And you're going to wish you would have, taken that a little bit more seriously. And then same with the strength and conditioning. Like, are you adhering to the workouts, whether it's the Pre-Accession program when that comes out, or it's any other program that you get? Are you truly sticking to it and doing what you can to become better to actually start this course?
Okay, so understanding how to fuel with food and then sticking to a program, following instructions. Okay, like that. Those are valid. How about you, Nick? What do you think?
I had one answer in my mind like right away, and then you said, "Let's keep it to the physical part." And
no,
so
don't.
What? No,
Send it.
Don't let me index you. Like if you got something, go.
I think I've got one for either. So for the physical, we'll touch on that real quick. That's work capacity, right? I think that being able to repeat workout after workout after workout, to be able to march and everything, get up early, handle the stress, right? Stress is systemic, so your body doesn't know like the difference between a hard workout or zero sleep and just getting yelled at all the time. And so preparing your body, preparing your mind to just like constantly be under stress, physical, mental, all of that. I think that there's real value in that. To go to the thing that I thought immediately was one thing that I think is kind of lacking, and we see this a lot, is humility. Being humble when you get there. I see a lot of trainees show up to BMT and they think, man, this program is kind of beneath me. And they've got a little chip on their shoulder because they see BMT as this is so easy at points, right? Like, are you really yelling at me because I didn't line up my water bottle correctly on the PT 10 pad, right? Or we're only doing sets of 8 pull-ups, or man, this kettlebell that we have out there is only 35 pounds. Are you kidding me? I was deadlifting, 315 a week ago. And I think that they missed the part that this is basic military training and that we've got 200 candidates out there, some of which have never lifted a day in their life, and they don't know how to control their body in the way that we're asking them to. Like, hey, I need you to hip hinge and keep your knees in the same position, right? Like, you can move your hips back without bending your knees down. Like, we need to get everybody to that level before sending them off to SWCC. So that air of arrogance shows up, and I don't think they realize that they're going to graduate BMT, and I'm going to be meeting them off the bus at SWCC. And so, Zach's going to be at BMT, and he's going to see him at SWCC, and the cadre is going to be there again. And so, man, all of a sudden, this first impression of this air of arrogance is going to follow you through the entire pipeline. And further on top of that, like those are your teammates now, right? Like you're kind of bashing the dude next to you, and like that person's going to be better at you than something later on, and they're not going to want to help you because you were a jerk to them in basic training, right? So having that air of humility and being humble and saying, hey, trust the process. I understand that maybe right now I'm crushing this, but a weakness of mine will get exposed later on. And I'm going to hope that my teammates are going to build me up at that point rather than leave me alone. I think that that's a huge piece that we're missing currently over at BMT.
Man, Nick, it's almost like you've seen a lot of this. Like it's almost like you've experienced this yourself, because
a lot of pain behind those words. Yeah. A lot of pain behind those eyes, buddy. I can hit, like, I don't know who you're talking to, but I know you're talking to somebody.
I was in the Air Force for 11 years too myself. And so like, you know, I've done it, right? This comes from experience. I think we've all been there within our profession at some point, got a little chip on our shoulder only to be humbled later on in life, right? That's
I can hear you. I'm right later. Here. Like, I don't know why, like in front of all of these people, I thought we were going to get an apartment after this, Nick. And now I feel like you're speaking to me. So
Zach, what do you got, man?
I think Nick hit the nail on the head with that last one. It's going to be tough to follow up with it, but
yeah.
I think and I preach this to our older guys that finish pre-dive, or I'm working with pre-dive, that are on dev team to go to dive school. And it's more so start establishing good habits right away. Whether, like Emily said, that's starting with nutrition and sleep being a big one. I'll harp on that again. And then just like mentally locking in on what you're about to go through when you go through this pipeline. I mean, at some point, like Nick said, you're going to have to rely on your teammates. You're going to be humbled at some point, and you're going to have to, work with your buddies. You're not going to be able to get through this whole pipeline at any point all by yourself. So I think right out the get-go, just establishing good habits of, obviously the physical development side and the nutrition, all that, but just mentally start preparing yourself about what you're about to go through, and have that humble experience, and just taking it day-to-day operations of, hey, maybe I didn't have it today, but you know what, tomorrow I'm going to reset the button. I'm going to get after it tomorrow. And just start focusing on that. Because I've seen, from my experience, this is from SWCC and everything else, we get plenty of candidates who you're like, man, this candidate physically has it, but guess what? Mm-hmm. They don't end up making it. Why? Because there's some sort of barrier mentally that they're just either not willing to push themselves, or just not able to handle the day-to-day grind of the pipeline.
No, all fantastic answers, and much better than what I was going to bring up. But
I love how Peaches was like, "Oh, I had something," and Peaches was like, "No, never mind."
I did. I just completely forgot about it. Don't worry about what I had to add.
I got a TBI. I got blown up a couple times. I'm a chief. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have heard.
Grip strength, like that is, and that's not just for the candidates. And the reason why I say that is because when I went through Indoc, grip strength was not an issue for me, because I was working out hard on it. But what I felt that a lot when I went to another selection at another unit was grip strength. And from what we've kind of heard through the grapevine is that is actually an issue with some of the candidates that are showing up as grip strength. So I was going to throw that out there. Don't neglect your grip strength. Work on that as well as you're working on everything else. I don't know if you three had anything to add to that or not. Cool. All right.
Aaron, what you got? They do a lot of farmers carries and stuff like that, and it is to echo, I've heard those whisperings from later on in the pipeline as well. So not to give anything away, but you're dead on. It's going to help with your pull-ups. It's going to help with everything. Get strong hands.
Yep. Nice, big, strong hands. That's a good Neverending Story reference. Perfect. The Rock Eater, dude. Go look it up, young people. Artax is the name of the horse. He died in the swamp of sadness. Anyway.
Sad.
Get it. So I did want to start talking about something. We kind of opened the door and we kind of like touched on it a little bit, but some of that resiliency is something that you're seeing could be built up a little bit better. And you see candidates, Zach, I love hearing you say, you see this person that has all the physical tools to make it and they just don't. You guys have started doing something a little bit wacky, a little throwback, a little something called PRT, which is your prolonged resiliency training. And I've heard some good reflections of it. I happen to be pretty good friends with one of the guys that works down there, old MK himself. And he and I were kind of talking about it via text. And he seems to be of the mind that it's really helping set students up. Can any one of you, I'll open it up and you don't have to give away too many things behind the curtain. But can you guys talk about that prolonged resiliency training or PRT and what it's meant to elicit? Because we don't do anything without an output, right? We have an input and an output. What output are we looking for PRT? And Emily, I don't know why you're smiling about this one. Do you want to talk about it, or is that the don't talk to me? She started smiling, and I don't know if that's the don't ask me this question, Aaron smile, or if this is the ooh, I can't wait smile. So you know what? Blink twice.
I think
if you don't want to talk.
There's some value to it just being a fun little surprise for the students.
Good. Okay. Fair enough. I think that's fine right there. Just understand that there's a fun little thing that we're going to do that we're going to help you with that resilience and round out your candidate cone self with a little bit extra resilience.
You're going to be so resilient afterwards. So resilient.
Resiliency is so hot right now. So here's what I kind of want to do as we get to the end of this thing. First of all, thanks for coming on, guys. The Special Warfare Candidate course has gone through name changes and curriculum changes and, even location changes in the last 5 years. And you guys are absolutely crushing it. Some things that I want to highlight is if you haven't heard what they've said the entire time, they give full spectrum support from before you're in the pipeline all the way through. Zach was talking about how we're still supporting people all the way through their dive school or getting ready to go do any of these other courses. Like there's a whole team of professionals that's behind you. So, please trust that process. One thing I did want to talk about is I know this would never happen because every single one of these hardened warriors is going to go out on their shield or with it. I got it. They're going to, till Valhalla brother, who's going to carry the goats.
Stop it.
But Emily, I wanted to talk about white team just a little bit. So if somebody does injure themselves and then gets back onto that team, what does that process look like? How long can somebody expect to be in there? Stuff like that.
Yeah, it really just varies on the degree of the injury. So shin splints or, a little like if your hamstring's bothering you or shoulders bothering you, we can usually rehab that while you're at SWCC.
Nice.
Yeah. So we take care of that. If it's, let's say like a grade 2 or above bone stress injury, bilateral legs, you're likely going to go to white team. And there's a great team over there of sports med doctors, athletic trainers, physical therapists, and 4Js like myself that are there for your rehab, as well as strength and conditioning coaches who tailor your workouts based on your injury. So that can vary from one SWCC course, so about 7 weeks long, to sometimes it's months. Just again, depends on the level of injury and how severe it is and how well you recover from that. I've seen students come back, for the very next SWCC class, start no problems. So it kind of just depends, but I promise you, it's a great team. That our primary objective is to keep you in the pipeline and get you better.
Thanks. That's awesome. And you kind of used these words earlier, so I'll open it up to everybody. But Emily, I'd like you to start. Can you talk me through the difference between a candidate is hurt and when a candidate is injured and what they need to do? We alluded to it earlier. You watch that candidate run around and he's limping. He looks like a 90-year-old man bent over at the waist, and he refuses to go get seen for whatever reason because he's like, oh well, I'm just hurt. I'm not necessarily injured. Can you give me your opinion on that one?
Yeah, so we do, the athletic trainers that are there at every single modality, and the strength coaches or swim coaches or run coaches, they do a pretty good job at identifying those. And at that point, when you're identified, you don't really have a choice. You're going to get evaluated, and we're going to either put you on a profile, pull you for the day. We can put students on quarters for the day. Like maybe they just need some rest. Maybe they just need to sleep it off and eat some food, and then they're good to go the next day. But there's a lot of eyes at SWCC, and at BMT,
Yep.
so we're pretty good at catching those and rehabbing it quickly. So and then injured, so that's already been established. They've been diagnosed with a specific injury, and at that point, they either stay in the course or they get pulled to white team.
Awesome. Nick, Zach, anything on that one?
They're over here being like, get back to work. Stop being dramatic.
No one cares.
I don't care if you feel like, oh, I need a day to rest. They're like,
do you know what malingering is, young man?
I think that's why having the human performance flight alongside the cadre helps.
Yeah.
So we're able to have those conversations right then and there.
Yeah, I can add to that as well. We always do a brief, just kind of a HPS brief with the candidates at SWCC, and it just kind of goes over just basic fundamentals. And then we kind of start diving into that question of, pain, discomfort, injury type thing. And we kind of brief them, say, hey, you're going to experience all three of these probably at some point. And probably by the end of this course, you should have a good understanding of what those definitions are for yourself when it comes to those. And then we, at the very end of SWCC, we'll give that same brief and we'll ask that same question and we'll say, hey, raise of hands, how many of you, understand what pain is? How many do you understand what discomfort is? And versus injury. And I think by show of hands, it seems like all the candidates then realize, because they've now gone through some good training or some, I'd say, above average training at that point, and they can now identify what those are.
Yeah, and I think that it's really important for the candidates to realize that, like, everybody there, including the cadre, who seem like they don't care, like, your best interest is at their hearts, right? And so it really is, it's got to be a conversation and a dialogue. If you're feeling some discomfort, you can bring that up to the coach, who's coaching that. And if they really think that, like, you can press, like, they're going to give you that in an earnest way, in a sense that's not going to hurt you anymore. And if it's a real injury, then they're going to get the ATs and PTs out there to take a look at it. And the sooner that you identify those things, you probably have a better chance of getting back into the fight than putting it off and trying to be that hero, that stoic person. And, like, now a real, no kidding, injury developed and you're on white team.
Right. Well, speaking of the best possible chance and all this other thing, we do get a lot of questions, and this being the strength and conditioning community, I think supplements are there, and most of our ridiculous questions come out of the state of Ohio, which, by the way, if you're there and you're looking at the pre-accession thing, spending more time outside in Ohio is probably not a good thing, but I'm assuming it just makes you weaker.
Your resilience. Like, if you just live in Ohio, you got to trust me, your resilience through the roof.
I don't know. It seems like a terrible place, but supplements. Should people be taking supplements like before they join, and what should they be taking to get that base layer of strength, and then what are they allowed to take or not take while they're there at the candidate course? And, I'm not really sure who to start with this. We'll start with Zach. Zach, when pre-accessions, what kind of supplements should the students be taking unless they're from Ohio?
Can you repeat that question? Sorry, I cut out real quick.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we were talking about supplements. Would we recommend candidates to take supplements before they join? And then, because it's going to be restricted, I'm assuming, once they get, BMT and at SWCC. So do those things actually help you out in the beginning? And, you have any recommendations?
I'd probably like to avoid that question because we have a nutritionist on staff. So I don't want to speak for them.
That makes sense.
That's the best possible question or answer that you could have given to that, Zach. It's listen to the nutritionist. And if the nutritionist isn't saying that you should be taking something, then you probably don't need that. Most of these things can probably be fixed with a proper diet. I assume that's probably the right answer.
I would say, most of our candidates who are at 18 to 20 years old, probably, they got enough supplements flowing through their body already that they just eating plenty of food, right? They're already at an advantage with age. just eat plenty of food, stay hydrated, plenty of sleep. I'll just keep it vague at that.
Well, I do have one follow up, because I have run into this back when I was at the candidate course. Students that show up, they get the brief from the nutritionist. They understand that carbs and fats and all these other things are good, and they need to be putting in max calories for max output. How do you deal with the students that like refuse to eat breakfast, or like they still want to eat like chicken breast and broccoli because some celebrity told them that's how they got a 6-pack? You know what I mean? That's kind of open.
that was a statement. Usually questions have a question mark at the end of it, but Trent likes to end sentences in exclamation points or periods.
I get fired up and then I just keep going.
I don't think we really deal with it. I think that the course deals with it, right? Like, and that's a harsh reality, and that's nice. Kind of a hard answer, but I think that it's really true. Like, we see the guys that all of a sudden their HRV is tanking, their sleep is going down, and they fill out like a POMS-Q questionnaire every single morning, and they're like, "I'm constantly tired. I'm constantly," and then we start asking, and we dig in, and we find out that like, following X, Y, and Z, right? I'm keto and I'm not eating any carbs. And it's like, oh, well, there you go, right? So it's like one of those lessons that kind of slap the candidate in their face themselves. And, every candidate that I've worked with that I've then been like, hey, like that sounds ridiculous, start eating, they come back to me a week later and they're like, oh, wow, I feel amazing now. I'm like, I didn't, and it's like, yeah, no kidding, right? So I think it's one of those hard lessons that they deal with themselves.
Yeah. Day two, I'll jump in. Sorry, Zach. I'll say week one, I work with the diet staff, and we're running InBodies, we're running bod pods and DEXA week one. So you're exposed at that point. And typically, from what the research has shown, is anybody, male or female, who's under 150 pounds coming into the pipeline. So this is after BMT. I automatically send them to the dietitian, and I'm like, hey, you need to eat some more. So that's just because that 150 pound marker is kind of where we see decrease in performance and those types of things. So,
easy.
Yep. Not always, but it's just something to consider, right? And so that's kind of a red flag for me. Like if you're 150 pounds or less, especially if you're taller, you need to eat some more. So, like I said,
hot take.
Yep.
People, I love this too, because people always get it messed up. They're always just like, they don't think they have no idea what like our sizes are comparatively. I'm too something to do something. And these two other nerds over here, you got statistical data that says you guys ain't gonna make it. I don't know what's wrong with y'all, but
well, it's not always. It's not like, oh, you're less than 150 pounds, you're not gonna make it. It's just there could be a deficit in nutrition that could then lead to a deficit in performance. So our goal is to keep you healthy. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd like to chime in on that as well. And the question I always ask the candidates is, what's your goal? And for most of them, their goal should be to make it through BMT, make it through SWCC, make it through pre-dive. Does your actions fall in line with those goals? And that's really what it comes down to. And it's not just nutrition, and it's strength training, it's everything. If you're working towards big arms and being super muscle bound, that's not going to help you make it through dive when you got to reach your dive thing, So it's more than just nutrition. It's, again, I ask the candidates, what's your goal? And obviously your goal should be to, your first goal should be make it to the next day of that course. And then your big long-term goal, make it through that course. And then again, do your day-to-day operations fall in line with that goal?
Absolutely. That's great input. For me, my day-to-day goal is I just want these anaconda arms and a dump truck booty, and I want to be throwing weight around. That's it. I want to
the arms and the controller and the PJ arm. Start flexing automatically.
You're not grabbing a dive tank no more, right?
Oh, wow. Hurtful guy. It's not that hard. I don't need, listen, tippity in your face. And I will say, like, to kind of wrap all this up, kind of this part of the discussion up, supplements, number one, guys and gals out there, sleep. If they could put the things that you get from sleep into a pill, they would make that pill illegal for you to take. Like that was a great, I think Jason Khalipa or maybe Rich Froning said that recently. He's like, I think it was Jason or I think it was Jason Khalipa, but he said straight up, if you could get the benefits from a pill of what you get from an actual good sleep routine, they would make it illegal for athletes to take. Like it's the most important thing that you can do. Everything else falls in line. And then nutrition is kind of secondary after that. We heard a lot about trust in the process today. We want to thank you guys for coming on and kind of pulling this curtain back for what we're doing at the Special Warfare Candidate course. Somebody asked us on the DMs, how do you guys feel about the course changing? We feel great about it because we're having a data-based conversation about how it is that we can get the highest success rate to get you to ANS completely ready to go, injury-free, and actually ready to crush not only the pipeline, but your actual career as an operator. So that fast forward in 20 years, you have this basic floor of movement patterns and durability and proper nutritional habits and proper sleep hygiene. And you're going to be able to take on a lifetime of stress, not just one solid course. So first of all, thank you all for coming on. We're going to end it in our normal fashion. So we always ask our guests, hey, if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the candidates coming in, this can be fitness-based, this can be your own personal philosophy. If you could grab them by the face and go, hey, focus on this one thing, what would that one thing be? Zach, I'll start with you.
I would say take one day at a time. Don't look at the big puzzle of this long pipeline. Take one day at a time. Every day's a new day. I'll leave it at that.
Well said. Emily, what's up?
I would say the rest of the Air Force is not as good as it is here. So I think a lot of the students that come in don't know what they don't know about the rest of the Air Force. I know Nick is nodding because he's been in the regular Air Force. I'm in the regular Air Force, and I think just keeping sight of why you're here and what you're doing, and also being honest with yourself. Like if you have that thought, like, hey, maybe this isn't for me, then honor that. Honor wherever you are.
Awesome. Nick.
That's hard to follow up. Because it's true, but I'll add to it, like, stay humble. You can always learn. There's always going to be somebody that's better than you, and that's okay. Lean on those people when they're better than you, and let them lean on you when you're better than them, right? It's a team environment. You're not going to get through it by yourself, like Zach already said. Stay humble and just constantly be open to keep learning.
Absolutely. Comparison is the thief of joy, I believe, is the most common statement there. Thanks again, staff from the Special Warfare Candidate course, for coming on. If you guys want to hit them up on their socials, just check us out. We follow each other. No big deal. I won't put them on the spot to put their Instagram handles out. But for everybody else out there, check out the website over at onesready.com. If you are thinking about training for all of these things, we partner with people specifically to help you get there, from gear to training advice to supplementation, legal, just hydration, that'll actually get you there. So again, thanks for coming on. Emily, Nick, Zach, you guys crushed it for us. Special Warfare Candidate course. You had questions? You probably shouldn't now. For everybody else, train hard. Have a great one. Later.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.